Hello YouTube, this is Matt Pullen. You may have noticed that I've not done any chess videos for quite a while. There are a couple reasons for this. Firstly, I've been quite busy with tournaments lately. I just played for a team in the U.S. Amateur Team North tournament. And my team, Pyramid Blockade, finished 9th overall and won the top team under 1900 prize. I performed decently on first board with 3 out of 5 points. My performance rating was something like 2197. Secondly, I'm using a brand new custom built PC. I got Windows 7 now. And it took me a while to get it running properly and with the recording software that I like to use. So we'll see how this turns out. I still got a stack of score sheets that I haven't entered into my computer yet from the last 3 or 4 tournaments I've played, so I'm a bit behind. But for the time being, I've decided to present you with this pawn endgame video. This is a position from a recent ICC game. White is to move. I would like to invite you to pause the video, take 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and write down on a piece of paper who you think is winning this endgame and why. You should include what you think the best moves for both sides are without setting up a board or moving pieces. It should be a good exercise. Or if you want, you could just passively watch the video as I continue to show you what the best moves are versus what happened in the game. And you could say to your computer screen out loud, "Oh, yeah, I saw that," or something to that effect. It's up to you. I'm going to be continuing the video in 10 seconds. Okay, so white to move here, and is pawn endgame. Pawns on both sides of the board, equal pawns. But you'll notice that white has the outside passed pawn. That's a pawn on the A file versus black's pawn on the C file. And this is a positional advantage because you can exchange the outside passed pawn in order to gain a time advantage. For instance, here white played a4 check, black moved the king over to a5, and then white brought the king up to c4. Now black captured the pawn, white captured the pawn, and white has taken his positional advantage of the outside passed pawn, taken that to the bank, and converted it into something more concrete. He now has a time advantage. His king is closer by 2 moves to the side of the board where all the pawns are still on. So now what happens is both sides are going to go over to the king side and try and knock out the base of the enemy pawn chain. Now, of course, pawns defend each other in chains. This pawn defends this pawn defends this pawn, and this pawn defends this pawn. The base of the pawn chain is h7 for the black pawns. In the case of the white pawns, the base would be f2, or I guess there's another base on h2. So here's what happened in the game. King b3, king d5, king c3, and king e5. This move 40, where white played his king to e5, this is a critical move, and we'll look at later what is possible in this position versus what happened in the game. What happened in the game is white plays king e5, and his idea is to march over and grab this pawn, and then grab this pawn, and then maybe he'll try and march the h-pawn. Black, on the other hand, is going to come down and grab f2, and then grab e3, and then come off and try and march the e-pawn. So both sides go about their plans. Black chops on f2, white chops on h7, black chops on e3, white chops on g6. And here you can pause if you want and see if you can find the best continuation for black. All right, best continuation for black is f4, actually. He could move his king off and then push the pawn to the end zone. But f4 involves the trade of the f for the g pawns, because if white were to simply push the h pawn forward now, black could capture on g3, and then in 2 moves he'd queen with check to the white king. So that's no good. So white has to take in order to avoid the queen with check. And so now black takes. Now black has won a tempo, because in recapturing he's unblocked the pawn by moving his king. So black has 3 moves to go. White, remember the pawn on the second rank can move 2 squares at once, so he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to go. So white is behind by 2 moves, and that second move is very important, because ordinarily when the rook pawn or the bishop pawn reaches the 7th rank, it's a draw against the queen. But no, not in this position, because e3, e2, e1 queen, h7. And now if white had one more move, he could play king g7 and threaten to queen the pawn. But no, it's black's move. And actually in this position, white resigned. Why? Because black has queen to e5, and there's no way to stop the queen from parking on the square in front of the pawn. When the queen is fighting against the pawn and the queen is able to move to the square in front of the pawn, no matter which pawn it is on the board, it is a win, because the white king can then do nothing, and then black can just move in his king. So let's go back. This was not the best sequence of moves for both sides. There's an idea white could have played down the previous move for the move before that, but when he plays king e5 and allows the black king to come in and defend this pawn, he loses his chance to play the winning idea here. Now, why, if white had the extra time, because he started with this outside pass pawn, why wasn't he able to win the race? Well, because he was fighting against the base of the pawn chain on h7. Black was fighting against the base of the pawn chain on f2. So white must have just seen the pawn chain base on h7 and said, okay, I'm going to go attack that. That's my plan. But really, what white should have been doing is asking himself, how can I change the base of the pawn chain to one that I can more easily attack? And I hope you came up with this move when you started your analysis. G4. This is the only winning move in this position. The idea of G4 is that white is threatening to exchange pawns, and if he exchanges pawns on f5, it is breaking up the opponent's pawn chain, because now the base of the pawn chain is going to be on f5, not on h7. And black can't really take this pawn. Let's say he takes it. Now the pawn on e4 has lost its defender, so white is just going to grab this. And now white has a passed pawn on e3. White's got to move the king over and then just push this pawn to the end zone. Black has a 3-on-2 advantage on the king side, but this majority is crippled. There's no way to make a passed pawn with a crippled 3-on-2. Black is going to have to use the king. So here's something that could happen if the game were to go down this path. Say king d2, king f4. Now the white king just threatens to take on g4. So say black guards it with h5. Now white starts advancing his own pawn. There's no way for black to catch it since he's behind the pawn, so black has to go after the white pawn. So take this and take this, and then white queens, and black is there's no way here for black to survive. Just takes this pawn, threatening to take the pawn on g3. So say black pushes the pawn to g2, preparing to queen. Queen takes with check. Only legal move is king g1. Now the white king comes into f3. Only legal move is king f1. Queen h3, pinning the pawn. Game over. So back up a little bit. All right, what happens if Black just lets that pawn on g4 go? All right, and here, I mean, White's got to push this pawn to avoid losing it, and then I don't know. White could just play h4, and this is easy. There's no way to stop this pawn. So really, the key was using the vulnerability of the pawn on e4. So the pawn can't be captured on g4. It's not a sacrifice, because if Black takes this one, he's going to lose this one. So Black has to just move the king in and allow this exchange on f5. And now the base of the pawn chain is f5. White is much more manageable. So say a king e5 and chop and chop. King g2. Black's only plan is to try and grab this, and then attempt to march the h pawn. The best way to win is probably just to let Black take on h2. I think h4 also wins, but just king f4, and if Black takes. So again, the rook pawn or the bishop pawn, they ordinarily draw against the queen if the pawn is able to reach the 7th rank. But here, because of the proximity of the white king, there is no draw. Say king g1. Let's see, what is there? You know what even wins here? White could just play king g3, forcing the pawn to go to h2, then queen, and Black queens, and then is checkmate. So yes, so this pawn endgame, really, which started from the outside passed pawn situation, it is won for White because his king is closer to the action, but is only won by one tempo, and White needs to see the critical idea, meaning to advance the pawn to g4, changing the base of the pawn chain from h7, which is very remote, to f5, which the white king can easily attack. So yeah, this I hope you learned something from this king and pawn endgame, in that if your opponent has a wide pawn chain, you shouldn't just be thinking, oh, how can I attack the base of this pawn chain? But really, is there a tactic? Is there a way that I can try and break up his chain or try and change the base of his chain? So yeah, this has been another chess video from the Green Castle Block channel. Wish you good luck in your games, and I'll talk to you again later.